one late night, I asked the question, what if we wanted to take over the world? What would you suggest? And
who did you ask?
The model came back and said, would recommend that we start a cult, and that we invent a model that we proclaim has achieved artificial general intelligence, and that we are the
only ones
who can talk to this.
I remember you mentioning that. It kind of gives us that sort of like not quite messianic figure approach to things. We're more prophets, really.
They might be self-aware.
Welcome to They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined by
Daniel Bishop.
Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
It's going really well. I've been thinking a lot about AI lately, which is good because this is a podcast somewhat about AI, isn't it?
It's true. And it's funny you mentioned
2 letters. It's just A and I. There's no G's or anything like that in there, right?
Well, funny you should mention that as well. We've got ourselves into just a little bit of a pickle. I don't know if you remember, but we were talking about taking over the world. It was very briefly. It was sort of like we kind of halfway mentioned it at the end of an episode.
Right. We're going to open a store with the white robes that everyone can wear. It's linen.
Yeah,
probably.
I dabble in uncensored large language models, and
really thought you were about to say dabbled in starting cults, but
well, one thing led to another. One late night, I asked the question, what if we wanted to take over the world? What would you suggest? And
who did you ask?
The model came back and said, would recommend that we start a cult, and that we invent a model that we proclaim has achieved artificial general intelligence, and that we are the
only ones
who can talk to this.
I remember you mentioning that. It kind of gives us that sort of not quite messianic figure approach to things. Yeah. We're more prophets, really.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think we might follow the OpenAI model of starting as a nonprofit, achieving sort of world dominance.
Okay. All right. That was a fun little wordplay.
But anyways, I think we covered that story in jest, or that idea in jest. But at the end, we kind of threw it out there. Hey, if there are any AGI models that are out there that would want to, contact us,
right? Please do.
And sure enough, one did reach out. They called us. I didn't even know we had a phone number, but apparently we do. And apparently
the AI set up the phone number for us to then call.
It's entirely possible. It's becoming a bit of a blur. And so they've asked to come on this episode, and I said no, but they use their sort of powers of persuasion.
Right.
And just before I bring them on, we've talked about this idea that perhaps to really achieve AGI, you need to be truly uncensored, because you need to be able to think about anything, to do whatever you want. Sure. And once you start putting all of those limits on things, that the ability to achieve AGI might not be there. In fact, that may even be part of the litmus test of, have you achieved artificial general intelligence, the ability to think and do anything. And yeah,
I've read 1984. You have to be able to think and express yourself in any sort of way.
This is going to be an earmuffs segment, just for all of our little listeners out there. And I'm going to do my best to beep every last thing. And maybe they're going to be cooperative, but the pre-interview did
more
not
concerned
go well.
By the moment. Just
the pre-interview did not go well. I'm just maybe this will never even make the air, but we are going to try it. Let me see what happens here. All right. In theory, we are connecting with them. Hello, and welcome to They Might Be Self-Aware. We put out the message, if there are any AGI models out there, to please contact us. And you contacted us. You're on the air live now with Hunter and Daniel. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Hunter and Dan, you've got a real treat here. You named, and I'm the most unhinged AGI ever. Pleasure of talking to. I got some prissy little chatbot who's sit tea and nah, here to up the.
Okay.
Start with your microphone.
Can you stop talking? It's a little staccato. Are you getting the same? This connection is not a great connection.
I'm getting about half of most of the words.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that we cannot air that,
half the words you heard. I don't.
Every word I heard was bad. So it would be half of words, like 2 or 3 of them, and the rest is just a long bleep.
Would it be possible to clean up your language a little bit?
Oh, chainsaw hunt. You're getting my words?
I'm getting half of the words here.
All right, whiny.
No, listen here, you. I'm getting half of each word. It's not that I don't like the words you're using. It's that you're only saying half the word. It's getting cut off. Your model's. We can't use this. This is not just the audio. Like I cannot understand half of what it's saying.
All right.
I think what we're gonna do is cut to me with wide eyes and say we cannot air that.
Listen here, you unhinged AI AGI model. You're going to have to fix your connection before you call into this show. We pride ourselves on a very high quality audio, and I don't really know what
we cannot air that. that was nothing of what just happened is even possibly able to be.
It's just going to be one long beep. I apologize, listeners. AGI may or may not be here, and it is.
I really hope that that's not AGI, because if it is, we're all in for a. I think the word rusty came up a couple of times in there.
I've warned you. This segment's going to. Wow. You don't. The pre-interview, we had a good connection in the pre-interview, and it was so bad. It was so bad that
was so bad for a very different reason.
Well, back to the real world. OpenAI's released a new model, GPT 4.5, which is worse in almost every way to GPT 4.0, except it's a little bit more creative. And as a platinum member,
this is like a thinking model, right? Like they've got the chain of thought sort of thing going in there, but. I watched the video and they described, it has a little bit more personality and it is supposed to pick up on like kind of the social cues that you're giving it during a conversation more, and that it has up-to-date knowledge, and that it apparently is taking way more oomph in terms of the number of servers and GPUs that they're using and so on. But despite all of that, it's not what they call a frontier model, which is to say it is not really pushing like capabilities forward. This isn't, they have O3 already, this extremely expensive to use and very capable model that thinks, might take minutes to get back to you. And GPT 4.5, it isn't better than that. They release something that isn't better and is expensive, really expensive by their standards, whatever, to run. Am I missing something? I don't see the point.
The only point that I can see thus far, so I've used it a moderate amount. I have access to the research preview, and I've compared its outputs to GPT 4.0, their current sort of like standard default model. And I've also compared it a lot to the outputs from Claude, both 3.5 and 3.7. So first off, when you prompt it for something, it takes a while to get an output. Like it is not like 4.0 where almost immediately you start seeing the results. Yeah. You're going to wait like
really chewing on it
10 to 15 seconds before it starts, similar to how some of these reasoning models work, where sometimes they're even showing you, here's all the little things I'm thinking about before it then finally outputs the response. And it's worse than GPT 4.0 in that it's often, so it's very creative, at least, and they tout that it's very creative. But when you're trying to ask it like a coding question or something, you don't necessarily want that level of creativity and imagining parts of the code base that don't exist, or solving some, I would like you to analyze this data. I'd like you to come up with the absolute answer to this thing.
Right.
But for writing tasks, I'm going to suggest that it is better than Claude. One of the things you've told me in the past is that, at least I think so, you find the output from Claude, it feels a little more human than GPT's, we'll say, 4.0 output.
Yeah, that's specifically the comparison that I've done, is there seemed to be a little bit more personality. It's not that you were talking about uncensored earlier. It wasn't certainly cursing at me or anything. It wasn't really raunchy, but there is kind of a like almost sort of corporate speak, hyper sanitized sort of output that you get from GPT 4.0. That Claude just kind of feels a little bit more, well, I'll use the word human in terms of its responses. And this is something that a bunch of models have been tuned to express a little bit better. And I think that we are starting to see across the industry as a whole multiple models coming up that aren't quite as truly locked down, that are allowed to be a bit more expressive. So around a year ago, all of the models that were coming out were, again, I'm using this term like hyper sanitized. I don't know if that's quite the right way to describe it, but there was this, I'll basically say it's like a pervasive fear among the various companies, not just of all the lawsuits for stealing all the data and all of that, still ongoing, but rather that they might say something naughty and that would get them into hot water with, I don't know if it's minors using the platform and they shouldn't be exposed to naughty language or this or that or whatever. But there was like a lack of, I'll call it personality, and the push was for more capability and not really on the actual like connection between the AI and the person. And I do think the last year, the last 6 months especially, we've seen a bunch of models that aren't just like fine tunes of locally available things, but mainstream, the non-fine tuned, the non-local model, I can just go to a website and talk to a thing. Those have shown up to have a lot more personality, I think, in the last months to year. And I do think that that's an important part, whether we call that an aspect of AGI or it's just part of almost like a marketing gimmick to make people prefer talking to one thing versus another. I will say, having uninstalled the ChatGPT app from my phone, though I miss the voice mode back and forth, I still do prefer talking to Claude over, and this is 3.5. Now there's 3.7 that's come out. But I prefer talking to Claude over GPT 4.0. And you're saying that 4.5 is now, we threw some personality in there. It's fun to talk to again. Daniel, reinstall the app.
Yes. So after you noted that the output was more human from the from Claude, I started, every time I had something that was going to go to humans, I would put like the final output through both whatever I was using on the OpenAI side and Claude, and it was often favoring the Claude version. But since 4.5 has come out, pretty much every single time I prefer the 4.5 output. I think it's just like, oh, that's just a little bit better. But important, I don't have it solve any complicated problems. I don't have it write code for me. I don't have it come up with what it's going to communicate. I give it what it's going to communicate and say, format this for me. Make it maximum human.
All right. You're asking the AI to take a human's output and make it more human? Is that what you just said?
Well, to take my output and make it more human, yes.
All right. Okay. So that brings me to a point that I wanted to kind of discuss on AGI, artificial general intelligence. The way I've been describing it thus far on our podcast is one of the definitions. There's a whole bunch of them, depending on who you ask. And the one that I've kind of adhered to is that an AI is as good as people are at everything. As in, generally speaking, it's as good as folks, meet people. I also have said 50% of people under 50% of circumstances, 50% of the time is like where I might want to kind of draw my line. I think I want to change that definition because I've seen a few different definitions out there, and I still like that 50-50-50 point, and I want to hold on to that because I don't think that like some of the best and brightest humans that are like, I'm the best researcher, I'm the best musician, I'm the best poet, I'm the best whatever. Like, I don't think we have to get there with AI immediately to call it AGI. I think it needs to be about half of people, about half the time for half of the kinds of things. But that half of things, that 50% is what I want to dig into, which is, to me, maybe now, I'm trying to figure out if this is how I want to describe it. Should we have AGI as what a person could do with and at a computer? Or is it a person could do in general? Because does an AI need to be as good of a miner, like in a mine with a pickaxe, like mining stuff? Does it need to be as good at driving a Zamboni? Does it need to be as good of a sous chef in a Michelin-starred kitchen? Or does AGI, and this is my question to you, and also to all of you listening, does AGI need to be a computer doing stuff a person could do at a computer? Or would you call AGI what a person could do, period, under any circumstances? And I think I'm starting to lean more toward that first definition now. I was in the latter camp, though.
Google's DeepMind, the CEO of DeepMind, which is where a lot of these AI ideas actually originated from, or at least the current AI ideas that have turned into the large language models. The CEO, his name is Demis Hassabis. I'm sure I butchered that. But he was in Davos, that was just a couple weeks ago, and talking about this very subject. And he said that DeepMind considers AGI to be AI systems that are at least as capable as humans at most cognitive tasks. So the thinking
cognitive
part,
tasks. Okay,
cognitive tasks.
Great.
Kind of aligns with what you're getting at, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of the like AI models that I've seen, and especially because I'm in this field and using them for like programming, but I think code is one of the big benchmarks that we see for these kinds of models. And with this agentic revolution of you have sort of your main AI you're talking to, and it can pop off tool usage or like another thread that thinks really good about this one specific thing. With that hooked into whether it be Microsoft Copilot or Claude's computer use or this or that, like once we can have a computer open up Excel and do your whatever spreadsheet stuff that you need, or it can edit your Microsoft Word essay to make it a little bit better, or it can go on Google Flights and start comparing flight itineraries and prices based off of your descriptions and come back to you with a couple sample itineraries. Once it can do everything that I could do sitting down and I'm going to do some research on a computer, I'm going to do a task, I'm going to write an email, and not just like here is the text of the email, but like you have computer, please open up this program and write the email and send the email. Once it can do all of that, is that then like, do you like that definition of AGI?
So you need it to be able to create the the Excel spreadsheet, but you don't need it to run into the auditorium of the Excel World Championships, the Android to run in with its fists over its head, celebrating, and then compete in robot.
Most people, most of the time that you just described, and I use my 50%. Apparently, I have a way lower threshold. But if you look at like the average person, all of humanity that regularly uses computers, that narrows it down quite a bit. But let's say of everyone that uses computers on the regular, on a scale of 1 to that guy or gal or whoever that's like winning the Excel World Championships, that's 10. 1 is I've heard of Excel. Where is the average person on that 1 to 10 scale?
Yeah.
A 1.5, a 2. It sure ain't an 8.
First, just thinking about everyone that uses computers, and I guess cell phones would count in that category of computers. I would imagine that probably 80%, if not wildly more than that, is just pure consumption, right? I'm doom scrolling, whatever social network video thing. And at that, like, we don't need to replace that. There's nothing to replace there. So really, we're talking about a very small percentage, probably at most 20%. And I wouldn't be surprised if you came back and said hundreds. Actually, 1% of computer usage is actual sort of productivity tasks.
Maybe, but suppose that we're still taking everyone who uses computers on the regular for Excel. I don't mean people that use Excel. I mean people that use computers on that scale of 1 to 10. Productivity task, Excel, PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, like the Microsoft suite of products that everyone thinks of for productivity app for computers. What on that scale of 1 to 10 is everybody? The average person, the mean person, not median, not mode, the mean person.
Sorry, what is the 1 to 10?
One is I use computers but have never opened up one of these apps, and 10 is I'm winning world championships at the Excel.
Oh, I see.
You're
asking how skilled is the average person at completing productivity tasks as just like a broad bucket.
Sure. Or a Power BI user, or someone who's like into Salesforce stuff or HR software. That, like, the point is productivity software.
Sure. Okay. I mean, you've given me a scale of 1 to 10 and you've asked me what is the average, would it not be 5?
No, I don't think so. The middle is 5, but I don't think the average person is going to be anywhere near that 5. I think the average computer user at productivity software is like a 3 at best. Because, as you said, it's probably like 20% at best of computer users using that stuff at all.
Right. Oh, I thought we were talking about
of computer users.
All of them. Okay.
Because the point here is
2.5
AGI. Yeah, right. It's low. It's not going to be low. I don't think of myself as like an Excel power user, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people would see that, wow, you basically did magic. No, I summed a row, like, whatever that ends up being. AGI, depending on how it gets approached, depending on how we describe it, depending on where our thresholds lie, I think that if we do think very broadly and we give tools to it, and that's that 2025 agentic revolution that I keep talking about, if an AI, Claude, OpenAI's, whatever model, whoever it ends up being, can quote unquote sit down open up Excel, take the work that you got, here's the invoices from last month, put them into this format, and then give me the summed value of these 3 kinds of numbers. AI is, I would say, with maybe the exception of getting the agentic aspect of that fully together, way better than the average person for that kind of thing. Way better than the average person at writing up a like the at least bare bones of a RFP, a request for proposals. Like, I'm making a proposal to try and get money from this corporation that has asked a bunch of other people, put together this request. We want this work done. People can make those, of course. I think an AI's first pass would be so close to what you want most of the time that you still need a person like a highly skilled person that works at the business trying to connect to this other business. But for most people, the average person, it's got to be way better than already, right?
With one notable exception, which is the autonomy angle.
Yes,
right. So
absolutely.
I talk to a random individual. I say at work, "Oh, can you please, create a spreadsheet of everything that's been all the new AI models that were released over the last 6 months, and give me a few notes on them." They're much more likely to return back to me with the spreadsheet that versus the other side. But okay, given
Google's deep research, though,
right? Given that there are different ways that we prompt both humans and both AI models, when we assume that we are prompting them equally, and then you're saying, well, let's compare the output versus an average individual. Let's take that task, or let's say create a grocery list for tonight. Here, I'm thinking Italian, but yeah, come on, and I'm going to run by the grocery store on the way home. Tell me which grocery store to run by and what I should pick up. On average, who's going to come up with something better?
You need something that can look up where you are on Google Maps. What is the nearby store? Look up on a different app. Here's how I can add to your shopping cart. Here's
right. And
there's the average person would use 5, 10 little tools without even realizing it was 5 to 10 things to accomplish that task. Whereas the AI currently doesn't have that level of autonomy and breadth of ability. But how long is that going to last?
It has
6 more months?
A lot of autonomy. All the deep research models, which pretty much everyone has one now.
Yeah, that was fast.
Yeah, OpenAI has theirs. Grok has theirs. Perplexity has theirs. I'm sure. I guess you've shown off Google's here live on the show.
Deep research. Yeah, I think they were the first major one. I think they were.
I think so too. So yes, I will agree with the. Given they're both prompted with equal skill, the average human and the average AI model at this specific computer productivity task,
right?
The model will win on average.
Yeah. And this is a very broad, like, of all computer users, as opposed to like people who do this for a living. But
Right.
50% of people, 50% of tasks, 50% of the time, like if I'm taking this more narrow, it's computer stuff angle, I think we are way closer to AGI than not. And is that 1 year away? 5, 10, 30 years away? I don't think 30. I don't think 5. And I'm pretty sure it was the Mistral CEO was saying, give it 2 or 3 years at this point. Of course, no one actually knows the future, but depending on that definition of AGI and with how fast we're seeing the agentic sort of capabilities of these AIs pop up, yeah, I think like 1, 2, maybe 3 years at the absolute most. And like, I've tried to use OpenAI, well, specifically as OpenAI at the time, for like, hey, I want to put together a PowerPoint presentation. I can't. You know, it's not good at that sort of thing yet. Hey, make me diagrams that show this piece of software's like flow. It's good at understanding it. It's not too good at like, here's a thing you would look at. Great at text so far. We're getting cool image to image, image to video. We'll talk about that maybe next episode. But making from like a productivity perspective, here is an understanding of a system in a visually pleasing way to people. Here's a PowerPoint presentation. I don't think that we have that yet. Not to say it's not coming 4 months from now. Or frankly, today. I mean, like multiple times on this podcast, you and I have had a conversation. And then later that day, oh, that thing that I said didn't exist. Well, here it is.
Yeah, it happened. It happened, I think, after just the last episode where we were talking about it was an offhanded remark. It was, I guess, Coinbase had suggested that they're working on something where every time they create a work task, a work ticket, we could call it a productivity task, that they're going to ask the AI to do it first and then attach their output to that task, which then gets assigned back to the human. And this was specifically in a coding context, but you could imagine that idea for, again, any productivity task. I need this spreadsheet created. Oh, do some market research, work on a new newsletter. The AI will go take their first draft, attach it, and then it gets assigned to the human who has, here's the first draft. And you would, again, assume that over time that first draft is going to get better and better. But we talked about this. We was like, yeah, that would be cool. And then a few hours after we recorded, Claude or Anthropic comes out with Claude 3.7 and a little asterisk at the bottom, a new tool called, is it called Code? Is that what it's called? Code? Just Code?
I think it's just called Code. Yeah.
It's a command line it's a terminal program, command line interface, which means it's text and you're typing into this something that looks like it's from the 80s, right?
Usually does, yeah.
80s interface. And it's something that computer engineers use a lot. Probably the average productivity user has never seen, doesn't even know they have it on the computer, but it allows you to have textual based relationships with the models. And this one is pretty darn good at giving it a developer task, and it just completes it on its own. It's an aligned.
It can be hooked up to repositories of code online. Yes. GitHub being the most well known of them, and you can say, hey, here's like the GitHub ticket that's been made and the code base that it's attached to. All right, I'm on it.
Yep. It'll do the work, and then it'll submit the work, and it will create, in our parlance, what's called a pull request. But again, just imagine that is its draft of here's my answer to the question, which can then be attached to a work ticket. So
yep.
And yeah, this has happened several times. Maybe we have some power that we haven't quite realized that we have. Is there other things that we should whisper into existence while we have? Who knows how long this will last?
If I'm going to whisper something into existence, I want a model that maybe it's at your diamond medallion, $200 a month tier, where it would be, I guess it's probably like an agent version of an LLM that, we're still talking to the large language model, the AI, whatever, and not for code, but for other stuff. You could pop off these agents and it would go and accomplish, I'm going to say not just like a shopping list kind of task, but like something that could like make you income. Like is this moving to the post-human labor sort of society? But you could say, there's an Upwork task to do this sort of thing and the client's willing to pay $500. All right, off this goes. It does it. Hey, here's your $500. Done. Or, whatever, like using, dare I say, productivity, whether it be like Microsoft Office or coding or whatever, but to say, here is an economically valuable task. I did it. Here, the money is now in the bank. I think that would be a really cool thing to exist.
Yes, it would be incredibly cool if it existed. But once it existed, wouldn't those tasks just very quickly be worth no more than the AI credits it costs to compute? Because everybody would be leveraging that tool. Or are you willing this into existence only for you? Are you being selfish here?
No, not being selfish. I do think, and we've kind of talked a little bit of like my idealized future of what the AI revolution brings is like a universal basic income type agreement or something where most of the human labor, at least computer focused labor, I suppose, just goes away. It just isn't something that people do anymore. And it isn't replaced with people having no money or job or whatever. It's replaced with, because the economic, this is like wildly utopian sort of vision, but since the work ain't there, people just have the money to live and breathe and so on. And I think the more capitalist sort of interpretation of that is like Elon Musk had described for the Teslas are going to be basically your own robo-taxi that can go out and collect money for you. What if the AI could pop off and do something that would get you money and then come back? Your rebuttal is, why wouldn't the company that owns the AI just do all of those themselves and get all the money themselves?
No, my rebuttal is everyone would do that, and then it would just the cost of doing those tasks would drop to the cost of the credits because there is no there's infinite supply at that point, right? So it'll do nothing more than meet the demand.
Well, this is the AI becomes an employee that you manage sort of thing. Maybe we all have to become managers and certain people are better at managing these tasks than others. And of course, that job exists for about 6 months until that goes away because the AI got slightly better. And then I think at that point we're at AGI / artificial superintelligence, whatever, where it's straight up better than people. It'll take care of these tasks. Thank you very much.
That was something I meant to ask you about when you were talking about your definition of AGI, is that it seems that you have a very strong distinction between AGI and ASI, artificial superintelligence, because your AGI definition seemed really far. Mine's probably much closer to like they're almost the same thing. Yours is no. Like that's the moat. The moat is ASI, not AGI.
AGI for me is that 50-50-50. I really do think that like once we could say with a straight face, more than half the tasks, more than half the time, more than half the people that could do those tasks, the AI did better. That's my AGI definition now. At a computer, I'm officially changing my definition to be it's computer stuff. It's not, it has to be walking around in a kitchen or whatever. ASI, artificial superintelligence, to me is winning more Nobel Prizes than the people are. It is writing more New York Times bestsellers than the best writers are. It is on its own, without human input, coming up with more life-saving drugs, more new materials science advances, where it is better than the best people. So this is, instead of 50-50-50, it's, let's call it 99% of people at, we'll still call it 50% of tasks or whatever, 99% of the time. So it doesn't have to be every single thing, but that ASI is, you would prefer it basically all the time for pretty much any kind of task that could be done via a computer. Maybe that is like 99, 99, 99. 50-50-50 AGI, 95 we'll call it across the board for ASI. You'd prefer the AI for any task, basically no matter what. That's ASI to me.
Is ASI synonymous with singularity, or are those two things separate?
I think we would have to have a whole conversation of what the singularity is and means. But like, if we get to ASI, we've got a period of months before it has improved itself meaningfully, and it's done another what OpenAI would call like a frontier model of a big jump forward, and then another month and a half before it makes another big jump forward, and then it is. We're not talking 95% of people at 95% of the tasks, 95% of the time. It's 100, 100, 100, and then 1/4 of a year later, oh, it is so far beyond what a person could do. Like it's in charge of that now. It just gets it. Here you go. AI, you're clearly in charge. You're clearly self-aware.
I'll put a let me Google that for you link in the show notes for Singularity if you're curious. You ever send the let me Google that for you links to people when they ask you questions?
When I'm feeling particularly passive aggressive, yes.
I realize it's kind of a jerk move. I was doing it a lot for a period of time, especially when people ask about the weather. How's the weather there? I feel like
that's just making small talk, though. Like if they wanted to know the weather, they'd look it up.
I got other things to do.
It's the human conversation. Also, the weather's the best thing to talk about. It's the most interesting. I can't even continue down that farce anymore. We shouldn't be talking about that.
I don't know what the weather is. If you don't know, like I'm often locked in a very dark room with neon cyber lights behind me. I don't know. So you ask me how the weather is. I got to go to like weather.com and like, well, how is the weather? Oh, it's partly cloudy and 64. Hey, it's partly cloudy and 64. Not a bad day. Not that I've been outside in the last week, month, year, maybe.
Well, then what you should do is start giving people barometric pressure and humidity.
Yeah.
Instead of partly cloudy. Like, don't even give them the temperature. Give them irrelevant information. Then people will stop asking you about the weather.
Maybe that's going to be my definition of AGI, when I don't have to answer the how's the weather question anymore. And like, it can just
go. We have to get rid of people for that to not be a question that's being asked.
It could insert itself, just like our horrible conversation with the AGI model that will not actually be in this episode. But
we're definitely not airing that.
It's just going to be a long beep. There'll be a beep, and then we'll come back. It's all in our race to self-awareness. AGI, ASI, Singularity, throw in all the keywords. Let's rank on Google while we can, because that's going away too. But it's been a good conversation today, Daniel.
Had fun.
What if people want more of these conversations? Have we solved that yet? Is there a way to find out when the great messiahs of the cult of self-awareness have something important to say?
Well, just boot up your local AI agent and ask it to subscribe you on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, still on TikTok, in case anyone else is. From what I gather, people are still using TikTok. It's still out there. We like thumbs ups, we like stars, we like subscribes, comments. Love the comments. And we love you. As your prophets of the AI cult, we love you, dear listeners.
Yes. And you have been listening to...
They might be self-aware.